I pinpointed the exact problem with Christopher Clairvoyant's Rouge after I finished recording yesterday. The problem is he wants to insist that Rouge is repentant and redeemable, but he will continue to have her openly use her powers as an offence, not even just on enemies, but she'll absorb Steelman or Wolfman or Smurf's powers. Never Storms, by the way. Never ever Storms. He will have Rouge do it to innocents or civilians simply to attain their memories and acquire some knowledge, like a password for a security lock. Meanwhile, whenever he has Karen Daggers appear, he will remind us all that she is a victim and insist upon that, while never acknowledging the elephant in the room, that one of the things that makes her a tremendous victim is the character he is doing a completely unearned redemption tale of. Anyway, this isn't a Christopher Clairvoyant comic. This is Miss Marbles, number 9, from 2007. We have a 2-part story here, reuniting Miss Marbles, Karen Daggers, with Rouge. And with it being written by a different writer, it has some actual thought and consideration put into it. Karen Daggers, she had been through some more alterations, which we will come to. But as you can see, she was now back to her original configuration, and Mar-Vell gave her a solo series, which lasts an impressive 50 issues. And I believe that would make it the longest running, non-Spider related, female starring Mar-Vell title. And this is mostly a good series. There is one terrible story early on which was crossover induced, but the rest is on the side of good. Our story here is that Rouge, she has shown up at Miss Marbles' apartment, and she is angry at Miss Marbles for attacking her. And Miss Marbles has no idea what she is talking about. It turns out that there is another Karen Daggers sleeping in her bed. This is one of my subscribers' wet dream. We have got ourselves an original Clone Saga going on here. This other Karen Daggers, she handily wears a John Jeffries Avengers era costume, making it easy to delineate the two. And we have a fight between Rouge and Karen Doubles. You want to know the reason Miss Marbles Week exists? I wanted to review this story because it was requested over a year ago that I review some of this series. And I read this and I got to this page and I wanted to talk about Rouge having fire powers. And I realised this is too early in the comic to explain Rouge's fire powers without ever having explained Rouge, and without ever having explained her connection to Miss Marbles, and without ever having explained Karen Daggers. This entire week of festivities is because I wanted to let you know about this brief period when Rouge had permanent fire powers. It also required the hardest bit of research I've had to do. We all know Rouge, or we should all now know, Rouge had access to Karen Daggers's Miss Marble's powers as a default for years and years. But she lost these at some point. I will begin with what I remember rather than the contradictory information I found when I double-checked by looking online. As far as I remember, I think she lost them in the mid-90s, around about Excellent Men 45, in 1996. This came after she had absorbed a significant amount of Ed Gambit's life force. Ed Gambit's personality was like overtaking her. I cannot find any source for this beyond my own memory. And as good as my memory is, sometimes it is wrong. Like I said, Uncanny Excellent Men 154 yesterday, when it was 158. I was conflating it with 164, which was when Karen Daggers got her new powers. What would further suggest that I am remembering things correctly is that after this, we saw an uptick in Rouge using her powers again. Using her powers to actually absorb other people's powers, rather than relying on her super strength. Now, what Wikipedia and Marvel fandom say is she lost her powers in Extreme Excellent Men, which is a nightmare series that I will never read. I looked at some of it last night for reference. All the issues cited on those wikis are wrong, and I saw some atrocious fucking plotting by the master planner, with Rouge having the most ridiculous setup for her powers ever. But I did find this bit here from issue 18, which is the closest thing I could find as evidence this was when she lost Karen Daggers's powers. Not issue 17, not issue 45, not Excellent Men issue 157. But here's the thing. Christopher Clairvoyant had her reabsorb Karen Daggers's powers in 2001. Actually, she must have already lost them if she needed to reabsorb them. But anyway, yeah, she definitely didn't have them anymore after Extreme Excellent Men. So then came Rouge's solo series in 2004. This was a period where for some reason Marvel gave solo books to so many of the Excellent Men. Rouge got one, Smurf had one, Ed Gambit had one, Julie Lee. And those were all intended as ongoings. The second story in Rouge's title was a big change for her. This was when she received new default powers to replace her long since gone Miss Marble's ones. While on an adventure in Japan with Sunman, Sunman was mortally wounded by Lady Shiva. He lost his legs, and so he offered to sacrifice himself and allow Rouge to absorb his powers so that Lady Shiva could be stopped. That is how Rouge got her fire powers. And if you are a fan of Sunman, don't panic too much. They very quickly restored his limbs through making him into one of Armageddon's jockeys. I think this was a good idea though. It let Rouge again have a fallback power rather than have her always absorbing from people, which doesn't really go with the idea that she feels guilty about that or ashamed of that, or she is reluctant to do that. The problem with these fire powers was that if you didn't read that Rouge series, no other comic was willing to take the time to explain them to you. People just assumed she was using random powers, rather than there being a story around it, and it being an actual push to repower Rouge. Sunman being retired as a character isn't great either, but are we glad I told you about this status quo for Rouge that none of the comics told you? So much so that by 2008, they had completely dropped it. They'd forgotten it. She didn't have Sunman's powers anymore. We get some very, very clunky love interest here. Karen Daggers meets a guy in the middle of the fight, and he does end up being one of her love interests for the rest of the series, but I think he's killed by Skrulls. Poor Karen Daggers. She can't catch a break, can she? I prefer her with Wonder Man anyway. What I do like about this series is its portrayal of Karen Daggers. She is powerful. She is strong. She is badass. She is cool. She is girl boss. She is beautiful. She is likeable. She is lovable. And she is very much the character she always should have been. Her profile might not be as illustrious as Wonder Woman, but she is every bit as good as her. On top of that, on these pages, we get some fantastic writing with Rouge, talking about her regrets, and how what she did to Karen Daggers was the worst thing she ever did, and that she feels sorry about it, and she never wants to do anything like that again. 2 panels of that, and Christopher Clairvoyant couldn't manage it in a whole issue that was meant to be about Rouge. Our pair of heroes go to Smurf for help. They want Smurf to analyse Karen doubles and work out what is going on. And Smurf has a ponytail, which might be his most ugly mutation yet. This is when we come to our story about Karen doubles. She hails from another universe. And I don't think I am reaching too much when I say I think this is very, very critical of Kurt Busey and John Jeffries' depiction of Karen Daggers. I guess it is time for another thing that'll take me hours to compile all the cutaways for. We begin on an I, with Marky Mark J working towards restoring Karen Daggers' original powers in Operation Galaxy Quest, and then Starburst. This was good because those new powers were ludicrous and made her unappealing because she was overpowered to the nth degree. She used up most of those powers reigniting the Earth's sun during Operation Galaxy Quest, and then had her original powers given back to her at the end of the Starburst crossover. What came next was Kurt Busey, and this could be a long rant, but I'll try not to get too into it. Kurt Busey made her an alcoholic. I think this was both a bad idea and it was done poorly. It was also done for absolutely disgusting reasons. Kurt Busey's favourite character is Iron Man. He wanted another half-popular hero to become a drunk so that Iron Man could mentor them and encourage them to become sober, because Iron Man is so swell and great. Drunk Karen Daggers is not fun. She's not flattering. It is absolutely insulting to anyone who liked the character, and it is not appropriate to do this to a character who has been so routinely victimised by writers and plots. Could Karen Daggers turn to alcohol to deal with her horrible life? Yeah, absolutely. That as a direction could be fine. But that it was done by this one writer with the aim of it only making Iron Man look good. And it being done to a character with such problematic history is worse. I also have made an expressed decision to not talk about a certain thing in Miss Marvel's week, but Kurt Busey does even worse with that later on. And this is all relevant here because our evil Miss Marbles, Karen Doubles, her backstory is that she is still the Kurt Busey version of the character. And we see that here. And funnily enough, we get a better depiction of when Rouge absorbed her powers than in the original comics. Karen Doubles mostly had the same life as Karen Daggers, but she never recovered from her alcoholism. She is selfish and completely unheroic. She wouldn't respond to Avengers summons because she was having time off, drinking at a bar. As a result, while she was getting drunk and the Avengers were fighting a threat, her Earth was destroyed, and that shunted her across to our universe. And here we have Karen Daggers very angrily and passionately take down and reject everything about Karen Doubles. That she sickens her and represents everything that she doesn't want to be. And then the fighting kicks off. We end with a really lame "Is Karen Daggers dead?" cliffhanger. But the writer responds to letters. You do need to read both parts of this story to get the most out of it, but I do enjoy it. It is a decent standalone two-parter, which I realise by definition can't class as standalone. But you can read it without reading the rest of the series. That is what I'm trying to say. It has some nice characterisation of Karen Daggers. It has some good moments for Rouge. And pettily, I appreciate it criticising Kurt Busey's alcoholism plotline. This grabs itself a 7 thumbs up, and that is all I do have for you today. Now go away now.